welcome Senator Toomey back to Bloomberg now. He's coming to us from Capitol Hill. So, Senator, great to have you back with us. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So you've been pretty outspoken in saying you don't think the president is approaching it in the most prudent way, using of tariffs for trade policy. What are you most disturbed by?
Well, I think the most disturbing is the 232 tariffs, invoking national security as a justification for taxing American consumers when we buy steel and aluminum from Canada and Mexico and our closest allies in Europe. First of all, that is not a threat to our national security, so it's just not true. But it's also, I think, very damaging. You know, what's the possible rationale for imposing this tax on Americans who buy steel from Canada? Canada, with whom we have a balance of trade overall, and actually a surplus of trade in steel. It just doesn't make any sense. The retaliation is already doing harm. The tariffs themselves are doing harm. So I think we do have an important and legitimate set of challenges with China that we need to address and we need to be tough about. But I think these 232 tariffs are a huge mistake.
So Senator Kevin Hassett, who, of course, is the White House senior economic advisor, is out today at the Washington Post saying, you know what, this is a negotiating matter. This is all going to work out. In fact, he says that there are reports, I haven't seen them yet, but he says there are reports that the EU may be showing up to try to cut automobile tariffs to zero. Is it working? Do you have any reason to believe that the president's strategy is working?
So that's a dangerous game. But look, if the Europeans would decide to eliminate all tariffs, that'd be terrific. But let's remember, yes, it's true that they impose a higher tax on cars than we impose on theirs, but we also impose a huge tax on imported pickup trucks. So, you know, I'm in favor of a mutual and reciprocal winding down of remaining tariffs. But unfortunately, with respect to Canada and Mexico, that doesn't seem to be the administration's goal. It seems to be that they want to sort of intimidate these countries into making concessions that will end up with a worse NAFTA, in my view. Things like a sunset provision and an end to the investor-state dispute settlement mechanism. Those are provisions that make NAFTA worse, not better.
Senator, you know, I was struck by a Wall Street Journal article today that talked about a schism in some of the personnel at the White House in terms of the trade policy. And I'm wondering what your contact has been like with the White House and your view of who's sort of in charge here.
Well, it'd be better to pose that question to folks at the White House. I have dealt with folks throughout the administration on this. I think it's clear that there's more than one view on this. I think the view that matters is the president's, and I just disagree with his take on deficits per se and what the end goal is.
So, Senator, I'm curious about what your Republican colleagues say to you, given the fact that you are taking a stand against the president. Are they saying in private, we agree with you? Are they saying we wouldn't really rattle the president if I were you? What's the response been?
Yeah. Well, look, it's mixed, right? I mean, first of all, I think the president deserves a lot of credit for a tremendous economy right now. We've got tremendous growth, record low unemployment, upward pressure on wages, everything that we promised as a result of tax reform and regulatory relief. None of us want to see that all disrupted with a trade war. Republican senators are, I think, unanimously in favor of trade, advocates for expanding trade. But you're right that there's a divide among us about whether or not to challenge the president on this policy. Look, I just think the Senate is a co-equal, independent branch of government. It's actually the first branch of government. It's Article 1. And we've got a responsibility to do our job. We can disagree with the president. We should do it respectfully, but when we disagree, we need to say so.
So, Senator, as you said, there may be some divisions on the Republican side, also on the Democratic side. Is it possible to get a coalition in the center here? Because you actually have sponsored, teamed up with Senator Corker, as well as Senator Warner and Senator Heitkamp. So there you guys, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. Is it possible? Do you have enough votes to move forward a real restriction, a legislative restriction on Section 232?
Yeah, and I should point out that the purpose of that legislation is to restore to Congress the constitutional responsibility for the imposition of tariffs in the case of national security issues. So that's what it does. To your question, the answer is we don't know, which is exactly why we should have a vote. We should debate this, we should have a vote, and let's find out. We'll have a lot of Republicans supported, we'll have Democrats support. I don't know whether it will be a majority or the 60-vote threshold that will probably be necessary, but that's what the Senate is for, to have the debate, to have the vote, let's find out.
And Senator, you are an elected official, so you talk to your constituents in Pennsylvania. You have a sense of what's playing out there across the country. Has this gone beyond the Beltway to really affect real people in their real lives?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, absolutely. I've got a long list of Pennsylvania companies, for instance, that have had to file for exclusions from these tariffs to avoid them, to get out from under them, because they're so badly adversely affected. That's one of the most immediate consequences that we've seen. Other companies are faced with higher prices, and now the retaliation begins. You know, you've reported on Harley-Davidson. Harley-Davidson has a big presence in Pennsylvania among many companies that are going to be facing the retaliation. So, yeah, we're hearing about it all across Pennsylvania.
Well, Senator, to pick up on exactly that point in David's question, how do you think the approach that President Trump has taken to trade is going to affect the GOP heading into these midterm elections?
It's hard to say. We're still a long way off. If this gets resolved, you know, in an acceptable fashion, if the president focuses on the really egregious behavior of China, where we really need to take serious measures to stop their theft of intellectual property and coercive technology transfer, then I think Republicans would overwhelmingly applaud that, support that effort. But we really shouldn't be invoking national security to raise tax on American consumers when they buy products from our best friends, our nearest neighbors, and our best allies.
Senator, do you think any other Republicans who are your colleagues are going to push back against President Trump who have yet to do so far?
I think if we get to the Senate floor and we have a vote, we will have a significant number of Republican senators will vote with me and Senator Corker to restore this congressional responsibility.
So, Senator, I pointed out you're a Republican, President Trump's a Republican. When you talk to your Republican president, is he transmitting on these issues or is he receiving as well?
Oh, he's absolutely receiving as well. Look, I disagree with the president on this, but I've got to give credit where it's due. The president has engaged with Republican senators and Democratic senators, I know as well, but I can speak for myself. He has picked up the phone and called me. He knows I disagree with him on trade. He has still invited my opinion. I have had countless meetings with the president himself and with his senior staff and with his cabinet secretaries. So we might disagree, but the president has been very, very much about getting input from a wide range of opinions.
Senator, thank you so much for your time. It's always good to hear your thoughts. That's Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania.
Thanks for having me.
Now